All right. So, I thought I'd try something a little different. So, in this clip, this is a part of the conversation that I had with Dr. Mark Phillips. You probably know him from London Wing Chun Academy or Fight Science YouTube channel. I asked him a question, and the question that I asked him was, how do you develop that cold clinical mindset for self protection, self defense, or violent encounters? And the answer that it gave me was actually one that I wasn't expecting. So, try to watch this episode to the very end and really pay attention because you might get some things out of this that might allow you to shift your training a little bit towards something that's more um, self protection based and less martial arty in a sense. So, uh, hope you liked the episode.
And that's the difference. And I've spoken about this on my channel. There's a difference between hot violence and cold violence. Hot violence is where you're extremely emotional and you can't be controlled and you're not in control of what you're doing. And if
Yeah.
someone asked you, what did you do? You can't remember.
Mhm.
Controlled is very contrived. You know what you're doing. It's no different to our military, for example, where
Mm. Now,
you have that intent.
yeah, and so for the people that for the martial artists that are looking to develop that kind of cold clinical mindset, what is it? What do they have to do? What, because it's not something that people are training for right now. There are some probably groups or organizations that are not martial arty that are doing that kind of practice. But what would someone that within that martial arts realm do to be able to develop that cold clinical mindset in for the cases of self-protection?
Okay, I came across it. I stumbled on it in my mid-20s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what happened, there's a story, there's a reason why I came across it. I came across it before I became a psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
When I became a psychologist, I understood it more because my area of expertise, essentially, when I was doing my PhD, especially, but my area of expertise, we look at how hostages are being treated in captivity. Now, if you know anything about kidnapping for ransom, it's a very violent crime. It characteristics involve a lot of torture of the hostage, a lot of basically rape, regardless of whether you're a man, woman, or child. That's a heavy feature of it. It's very, very violent. Torture, mutilation, and it's ongoing. And we're going beyond Geneva Convention here. Think of, I mean, most people are aware of Mexican cartels. Well, Mexican cartels are heavily involved in kidnapping for ransom as well. So you can imagine what you see in the news of what they're doing around, around. It's just the same. It's the same MO, as we call it, modus operandi. Same tactics, just imported into different crimes. So ironically, I worked around the area of insurgent kidnappings as well. And even ironically, insurgents, basically, we're talking about Islamic extremists. They have very similar MOs. And I will tell you, kidnapping, regardless of whether you've been kidnapped by Islamic insurgent, Mexican cartel, a Colombian rebel, Central African, militia group, Libyan, I can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
The MO would be relatively similar. How the hostage is treated, the depravity, torture, is pretty much, in some cases where you've got low levels, where you're looking at what I call common organized groups rather than sophisticated groups, so common criminals. such as drug dealers, for example.
Yeah.
You'll still get similar abuse. They will hold their hostages for a little bit longer. You know, they'll use irons on their faces or their backs or what have you to extort the money. Usually do it over a phone call, so the person knows that you're serious. And we're not talking about huge amounts of money either. You know, people think it's often about millions and millions of pounds. You see this in films. Those are hard targets. You'll never get those types of people. And even if you did, you wouldn't get that type of money anyway. We usually talk small amounts of money. So I guess what I'm rounding on is some of my work in learning how to prepare people for this type of mindset came later in life, because obviously when you're dealing with those types of events and trying to understand those types of events, you're really digging into a very murky level of people's behavior. I see people's behavior from a different perspective because I see what human beings are capable of doing, and it's not great, really, to be quite frank with you. I mean, I think there was probably a time in my career where it was, you know, it was a little bit difficult, but you become quite numb to it. But it was a little bit difficult, especially when you're looking at crimes involving children and so on. So children are quite often targets, especially in places like Pakistan and so on, Afghanistan at one point. And they were selling them off as well for, you know, for organs as well. So, you know, it's a very, very, very dark, very dark. So getting back to your question, I think I stumbled across the mindset in my 20s, early 20s. No, how old was I? I think I might have just been 20, or might have been around that age anyway.
Like early 20s.
Yeah, basically I got myself into a little bit of bother when I was a young lad. What happened was a friend of mine was holding a nightclub basically. It was a rave. We call them raves here, but it was a rave.
Yeah, raves is the kind of thing. Yeah, there's raves.
Yeah. So he asked me basically to ask myself and another friend to do security on the door. Anyway, the long story is I said, yeah, okay, fine, I'll do it. I needed the money anyway, because you do when you're young, and I didn't have much money teaching. When I first started teaching, I didn't make a lot of money. Yeah. So I used to sort of twilight my early years doing like nightclub security, raves, whatever. You know, people just ask you, just because you got a certain set of skills, people will ask you to do that. So I would. So on this occasion, what happened was the local drug dealer came down with his entourage. He was quite well known. We all knew him. He knew basically more or less who we were. But the point is that I insulted him. My only insult was I told him he had to pay to go in. And he was quite insulted by that. And there was a whole sort of drama behind it, which I'm not going to go into it. But it ended up where he took insult to it, and he ended up trying to kill the guy that arranged the party, because he felt he was, you know, insulted so much in front of his entourage, which, you know, was a mixed entourage of women and guys. So he had to make a point of keeping face. But somehow it sort of spilled, it transferred from the guy that had organized the rave to me.
Because you were the one that said you have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
kill the messenger.
It went from him. Somehow it went from, and they really did try to kill him. Anyway, they ended up trying to kill me, and it went on for about a year. It was a very difficult period of my life. Basically, it was very real. And it wasn't the sort of thing that, you know, you could go to the police and say, oh, because you just don't. And I was young as well. And it wasn't my first port of call. And even if I did, it wouldn't have made any difference, because, and there were very real attempts on my life. And I basically, that was a turning point in my martial art career, in terms of I was training seriously now. I wasn't training because you know,
you enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, exactly. Burn a few calories, You know, want to look good in my you know,
In
my
the
outfit.
summers when you're on the beach.
Exactly. It was very different. So my
Mm.
mindset completely changed. For me, it went the other way, actually. Me personally, it became quite dark. I actually became the people that I didn't want to become, which is quite sad now looking back, because I've not really spoken about this for a long time. But I had a very dark heart, but it was never to the point where I would be a menace or danger to society. I was just a danger to those people, because I can't really tell you. I mean, I'll tell you off camera, but some of the things that they did and so on were, I could write a book on it, basically. But it changed my perspective on martial arts, but I wasn't a martial artist anymore in that sense. I was training for a very different intention. And it was always self-defense, although sometimes I did have to think offensively, because the thing you learn is that defense isn't always the best defense. Sometimes offense is the best
Offense
defense.
is the best defense. And does that go back to the preemption that you were mentioning before? Like, preemption is always the best, because waiting to defend something means you're already on the back foot and you're already lost at that point.
Yeah, you've lost. I mean, if you think about just someone standing in front of you, if you're waiting for them to punch, you've got to react. You've got to see it, react, and then counter. That's 3 things you've got to do. You know, if I only have to hit you, I just hit you. I know it sounds, it's not the done thing in moral society. We can't tell people just hit someone. You can't, and I absolutely agree. And it is a dilemma. But I do have to take a critical judgment at some point that this person's really dangerous and they're going to harm me. I have to take action.